Hey everybody, it's Cadroll Hunter. In case you haven't noticed, silver's been on sale, so this is a great time to pick up some junk silver to add to your collection, and that's exactly what I've done, and I got a whole bunch of silver we're going to look through. So I recently went to my local coin shop and asked if they had junk silver, and they did. I got a couple bags here, and you gotta love that sound of silver. I've got some dollars, some half dollars, quarters, and dimes, some new shiny stuff, new air quote new, because they stopped making silver coinage in Canada in the 60s, but newer BU stuff, I should say, and some older stuff. We're gonna look through all of this and see what we got to add to our stack. Okay, we got a couple of things to add. That came out all at once, and I got another bag. I'm going to open this up, and we'll get this out. And you gotta love that sound of silver. So we'll look through all of this. I think what I'm going to do is sort it out by denomination and by monarch, as I've done in the past. We'll look through and see exactly what we got. You can see there's a nice, bright, shiny one back there, and some ones with some significant toning, which is always really cool. We'll take a look at everything. We'll see if we got anything that is maybe a lower mintage. Not likely, because my coin dealer is pretty good. I think it's sorting out the rare stuff. But I had a chance to handpick some nicer stuff and some older stuff from what they had. So we'll take a peek. All right, well, the first thing I did here was actually just separate it out by denomination, just to see what we were dealing with, how much we had. We have $3 in face value in dimes. We have $7 in face value in quarters, $8 in face value in 50-cent pieces, or half dollars if you like. And we actually have $16 in face value in $1 coins. So as I said in the intro, silver's been on sale. It's come down in price. So if you're interested, for all of this, what I paid was $17 and I think about 20 cents per dollar face value. Canadian. So that's not American, that's Canadian. And everything here is 80% silver. So you can do all the math if you want to see sort of what that is per troy ounce and all of that. But that is a decent price to pay for junk silver. So I'm happy to add this to my collection. So what we'll do, I think we'll start with the dimes and I'll separate them out to see what we got there. And we'll work our way through. Okay, I've separated out the dimes here. We got a good spread of dates. Starting with the George V, these two here I could not get a date from. If I looked really closely and took a lot of time, I might be able to. Regardless, they are King George V silver dimes to add to the stack. Up here, we got a 1930 and a 1931. We got the dates off of those guys. In the George VI, we got a range here. So nothing in the 30s from George VI, but we did get a 40, a couple 41s. A stack of 43s. This one on the top here is really tarnished, but it's actually in really nice condition. If I can actually see, you can see there's lots of detail in the hair, so some toning on that for sure, but it's actually one of the better ones. We've got next to that a 45, a 46, a 47 in pretty slick condition, a couple 49s, a couple 50s, and a 1952, again with some toning. And in the Elizabeth II years, I really just focused on picking up some really nice BU ones. So a couple 61s and 62s, got a 63 and a little stack of 64s in just gorgeous shape. So I'll tube those up. I'll even check against my collection to see if any one of these bright and shinies will upgrade my collection, because a couple of these are in really, really nice shape. Well, as fate would have it, one of those 1962s did actually upgrade. This is what I had in my book, this 1962, and if you flip it over, not in great shape. So I got a bit of an upgrade there. And there was one other one that I didn't actually show. I was trying to get a date off this one here and put it under the scope. And this one, I believe, is a 1918. Now, it could be a 1928. It's really hard to see what's going on here. Is it a 2? Or is it a 1? And the ones are pretty bold. It also looks like these numbers are a little askew, that this 8 here is quite a bit higher than these numbers here. So that's interesting. I'm going to see if I can find anything more about that. If this was a 1918, this would be sterling silver, 0.925. If it's a 1928, it is 80% silver. So it's hard to say. I think with this date, they're both King George V. If I focus in on here, you can see that. So I think even for the coin dealer, when they got this would be impossible to tell easily. And the more I'm looking at it, the more I'm thinking it might be just too hard to tell. In any case, I'll add that to my stack. So that's another one that we got here. Okay, we've got our dimes all tubed up and we've got our quarters all spread out here. And we'll start with our earliest ones. We got 5 King George V's, 1920, and a whole stack of 1929s there that we'll add. These aren't the lower mintage. The early 30s are actually around $500,000 or under. So those would be great to get. We didn't get any of those. The 1920 is minted at 1.975 million. The 1929 is the most common in around this area at 2.69. These are both 80% silver. In the George VI, we got a pretty decent looking 1937. We got a couple. You can see the one below is quite a bit more worn. It doesn't upgrade my collection. I had to check though just to see, because that one's actually nicer than we would see. This is what we'd often expect to see in the 30s. We got a couple 38s. We got a 40. We got a 47, and it's really hard to tell if this has a maple leaf or just damage. I think it might be a maple leaf. The maple leaf is more common. The 47 without the maple leaf is less common. The maple leaf, of course, meant that this coin would have been minted in 1948 while they were waiting for new dies from the Royal Mint in Britain to remove and the Emperor of India, because India gained its independence. So that's another good one. We got also a 48, a 49, and a 50 with some pretty significant toning. In the Elizabeth years, there is a first year 1953, and that's a cool one, which means that we can be looking for the no shoulder fold or shoulder fold. So we'll take a quick peek at that one a little closer and see what we got there. So I've pulled up that 1953 under the scope here. That's the one on the bottom. That's the one we got. The one on top is from my collection. The no shoulder fold and shoulder fold varieties on the quarters, the easiest way to differentiate them, because of course in the condition these are in, you can't really see whether or not that shoulder fold is there, is the fact that there are 2 date varieties, the large date and the small date. The one we got is this one on the bottom. It is clearly the large date. You can see how much bigger the numbers are and how much further they spread across on the coin. So this is the large date, no shoulder fold that we got. This one from my collection is the shoulder fold, small date. Not in great condition, and you wouldn't be able to see that shoulder fold anyhow, but this is how we can tell small date and large date. I'm just tubing these up, and I thought I'd show you this 1964. It's pretty nice on the reverse, and if I flip it over, you can see there's lots of toning. So I don't know if this was an ender in a roll at some point in time, if this was in somebody's book, either face up or face down, I don't know. But we got pretty white silver look on one side and pretty toned or tarnished on the other side. Pretty neat. So I was just about to move on to the 50-cent pieces, and I realized I missed a stack of quarters when I was sorting them out. So we've got here a 1930. It's pretty scratched up, but this one is minted under $1 million. So that's actually really cool that we got that. So we have that. Yeah, you can see those fresh scratches. I don't know how that happened, but under $1 million minted. Anyway, it's going in our stack. There's another 40, a 47 that is clearly the maple leaf. So I'm thinking the other 47 that we got might have just had a little bit of damage or debris on it to make me think there might have been a maple leaf. So I think we got a 47 and a 47 maple leaf. And then a really nice looking 1965 BU gem. And when I flip that over again, there's some pretty significant toning in spots. Not sure how that happened, but I guess just the way these things have been stored, that's why it's in the junk silver pile. Otherwise, this coin doesn't have any circulation wear, so it's in a mint state, but definitely it's been stored improperly. I brought the scale out here because I thought it might be interesting to see the differences in weight between these coins. All of them, their specifications are 5.83 grams. And of course, these older coins that are really worn, one of the things people always wonder about is, are they worth less because there's less silver, because silver might have been worn away as they've been circulated? And the truth is that they really trade as a multiple of face values. So nobody's really weighing these up to find out how much silver a coin may or may not have. They all sell for the same. This brand new looking 1965 and this 1930, even though this 1930 is really, really worn, are going to sell for the same amount. It's really based on face value. But for the sake of fun, we'll see how these actually weigh. So this 65, I expect, is going to be very close to 5.96. So that actually weighs heavy. So that's one coin. Let's try one of these King George VI. Weighs a bit lighter, 5.76. And of course, I expect that this King George V is going to weigh even lighter, 5.52. So there's a pretty big range here, but they all basically sell as though they are at spec, 5.83, and a multiple of face. So here is our small stack of 50-cent pieces. We have here a 1943, a 44, got a stack of 50s, got a really toned 1952. It's a little hard to see there. And the only Queen Elizabeth we got was a 1957. And so, as you know, if you've been watching any of my videos, I really like the 50-cent pieces, and there's lots of varieties. The dates on these were hand punched onto the die. And so what that means is that there's some variations where that last digit, so that's the part that was hand punched, that 3 could be further away or closer to the 4. And it exists in most of these King George VI 50-cent pieces. So we'll look at these 43s and 44s, or the 43 and 44 to start, and see which ones we got here. Okay, this 43 here is actually the wide date 43, so that 3 is further away from the 4. It's really tucked in close on the near date. There's also a 3/3 variety that you can find. I've found that previously, where this 3 is actually doubled on the die. We don't have that here, but this, or we can't tell for sure maybe in this condition, but certainly this is the wide date 43. Okay, now here's that 44, and there are a bunch of different variations of the wide date and the narrow date here. This 44 is a narrow date. There are versions where the narrow date, those 4s are practically touching, and it's not here, but most of the wide date varieties, the tail of the 4 over here would be right in the hoof of this animal here, and it's not the case. It's just sort of barely touching, so we would consider this the narrow date 1944. Next up, we'll check our 4 1950s. There are 3 different varieties to find. There's the full design, which is showing all 4 of these sort of lines within the 0. A partial design, where a couple of them don't really show very well. And then no design. And the no design is the most desirable, or the least common. And so we're going to look for that. I expect these will all have full design. I think that's something that our local coin shop would be looking for when the 1950s come in, because they're essentially worth 2.5 times what a standard one would be. So they wouldn't probably put it in the scrap bin. But this one has, I would say, full design in that 0. We'll look at the next one here. And that's definitely full design. And this guy here, that's definitely full design. You can see all those lines in the 0. And then our very last chance here, it's something really spectacular, is kind of dirty and damaged and toned. It's probably full design. I think it's just got some toning in there. So we didn't get any of the rare variety, but we did get some to look through, and that's always cool too. Last up under the scope is that 1952. It's the wide date. If it was the narrow date, that too would be really snugged up close to the 5. So that's the wide date 1952. And then the last one we have here is that 1957 laureate portrait. And this one doesn't actually have any significant varieties to look for. They stopped hand punching that last digit, and so the die actually had the full date there. So there's no real variation between them. So that's just one we're going to add to our tube, along with the rest we just looked through. Last up are our silver dollars. We got one in the 50s, a 1959. We got a 1960. We got a 1962. We got a 63. We got 3 1964s, the Charlottetown Confederation meetings, marking 100 years since that had happened. There's a variety we can look for in there. We got a couple 65s. There's some varieties we can find here too. We got a stack of 66s, 5 of them, and 2 of the 1967s. There's a variety here. We can look for one with a rotated die. Both of these are the standard orientation. So we'll take a look at these 64s and see what we got. All right, here's our 64, and what we're looking for, the variety is, we've got a designer's initials here, TS. We're looking for a version with no dot. Now, I can see the dot here is somewhat faint, so I'm thinking this is part of a die deterioration or an over-polished die where that T has, the dot after the T has disappeared completely. We can still see it here, and I looked at the other two first, and it's on both of them. This is the one that's probably the closest to being a no dot, but I don't think we could consider it that. So this is the regular version. The other one has a bit of a premium to it. If you don't have the dot in MS60, while this might be essentially at silver melt, with no dot, it's probably worth about $30. So there's definitely a premium, but we didn't get it here. We're going to scope both of these 1965s. There are actually 5 different varieties. What we're looking for on the obverse is small beads, medium beads, and large beads. So that's one variation. The other is that there's either a pointed 5 or a blunt 5. So we're going to scope both the obverse and reverse to see what we've got. I've got only 2 of the 5 varieties in my collection, so maybe we'll pick up something here. I haven't even looked yet, so let's take a peek. Okay, first up here, we've got one here, and this is the large bead. You can see how close these beads are to each other and how large they appear. We're looking over the GIN here particularly, but you can see here, these are large beads. We're gonna flip it over to see the 5, and what we're looking at is the bottom of this 5, and this is the blunt 5. So this is the large bead blunt 5. It's a variety I already have. We'll look at the next one now. Let's flip it under here. So this one, we can see, and this is nice and shiny, and this is the pointed 5. You can see the end of that 5 is pointed. So we got a couple varieties just by grabbing 2 1965s, which is really cool. And we're going to flip it over, and we're going to look at those beads here, and we can already see these beads are not nearly as big as the ones on the other coin. And so this is the small bead pointed 5, again, the other variety that I already have. So it's the opposite ones that I'm looking for. And none are tremendously scarce, but there is a premium, particularly for the large bead pointed 5. So probably wouldn't find that in the junk drawer. So there you have it. We got a couple varieties though, and that's always cool. So we've got 5 1966s we can scope here. There is a small bead and a large bead variety. And before I get too excited, the large bead variety is very common and essentially scrap value. The small bead variety is exceptionally scarce. To give you an idea, in an AU50, it goes for about $3,000 Canadian. So we're not expecting to find that. If we did, this would be a happy day. But we got to check because that's what we do, right? So I've got our first one under the scope, and right beside it, I've got the Numista website open. This is a great resource. With great pictures, you can see that, exactly what you're looking for. So for the large bead, the A is pointing directly to a large bead. The small bead, it's going to point between 2 small beads. So we've got it here, A, 2 large bead. That's the common large bead variety. We'll check the next 4. Well, I figure we may as well just look together. So the next one up here is definitely a large bead, no question about that. We'll grab another one here, and we're going to see, I think, the same thing, pointing right to a large bead. All right, our 4th one here, A to a large bead. Yep, no question. Last chance for something wonderful, and A to large bead, so no surprises there. Our very last coin, of course, we got 2 1967s. These have the Canada Goose on it. This is the commemorative for 100 years of Confederation. And so we'll add those to our tubes and our stacks. And I just hope that you have enjoyed this video where we looked at a bunch of Canadian silver, added them to our stack, looked to see if we had any varieties, anything different. If you liked the video, please give it a like. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, CAD Roll Hunter, please do that now. I always appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next time.